This is a review of a couple of the essential takeaways from the DEM Mastery exercise. I really feel the need to reinforce the critical difference between resolution and data quality or data accuracy. Critical might sound a little bit hyperbolic, but trust me, it's not. All right, so we're going to start by taking a look at the data setup in ArcGIS Pro. I have 3 sets of elevation data derived from 3 different sources. So we've got 0.5 meter LiDAR, 5 meter photogrammetry elevation data, and 10 meter elevation data downloaded from the USGS. Each one of these groups contains both an elevation model and a corresponding hillshade that was calculated from the DEM. When we display the 3 DEMs together, we can see that they have different spatial extents. Note the scale bars at the bottom here, 1 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 20 kilometers. Hopefully you can see the slight borders on each one of the tiles and how they're nested on top of each other. They all do overlay in the same location, Signal Peak in the Monroe Mountain Range in southern Utah. But the raster files are different sizes. So question 1 is why? Well, raster tiles are spatially sized to balance download efficiency with aerial coverage. Higher resolution means a smaller cell size, which means larger amounts of data being stored and therefore larger file sizes. So the higher the resolution, the smaller the DEM tile size. Again, to balance aerial coverage with download efficiency. When we zoom into a smaller area of interest, notice now that the scale bar has changed from 20 kilometers to 500 meters, or a half a kilometer. The DEMs appear to be displaying as if they are very different. The LiDAR is the only map showing any green. So what does that mean? It means that we're seeing a wider range of the LiDAR tiles' full range of elevation values. What am I talking about? And just for the record, these 3 maps are the same scale and extent. That's why I've just got one scale bar here. So I'm talking about the range of elevation values represented in each DEM tile. So look here, the LiDAR tile is covering the smallest extent, the area right around Signal Peak. The minimum and maximum elevations within this tile's area are 2,600 meters to roughly 3,400 meters. The 5 meter autocorrelated tile is bigger, covering a larger area. The maximum value is also roughly 3,400 meters, which indicates that Signal Peak is still the highest peak in the tile's area. But the minimum elevation has dropped 1,000 meters from 2,600 to 1,600 meters. And notice the lower valley area in the northwest corner of the autocorrelated map. From the western edge of the LiDAR tile to the western edge of the autocorrelated tile in this lower area, the elevation has dropped around 1,000 meters. And that's what we can kind of take away from these ranges of values. Why is this important? Why am I talking about this? The really important takeaway here is that in comparing these DEMs side by side, green, the color green in this color ramp, is not representing the same elevation value. So that can be really misleading. If we zoom back in and look at a side-by-side comparison, the same scale and extent in each one of the maps, again, the LiDAR map looks different, but it's only the colors that are different. And like I said, this can be very misleading. So how can we check into this? We can explore it further by clicking on the map, using the Explorer tool, and read the elevation values from the LiDAR DEM and the USGS DEM. That's kind of what I've set up here. Here I'm showing the 0.5 meter LiDAR tile overlaid on the 10 meter DEM. This is showing here just the DEM color of the 10 meter data with the visibility of the LiDAR tile turned off. The Explorer pop-up shows us that 2,300 meters elevation is displayed in green on the LiDAR map. That's here. But it's being displayed with the color orange on the USGS map. So the elevation in this one location is the same, but on the LiDAR tile, it's being displayed in green, and here it's being displayed in orange. There's nothing different about the maps other than the range of values that the color ramp is being spread over. And like I said, that can lead to being very deceiving, especially to an unsuspecting map reader. In order to make effective side-by-side visual comparisons, you have to map the color ramp to the same set of min and max raster values to ensure that similar elevations are mapped with correspondingly similar colors. And there's a link in the description to a video demonstration of how to map your colors correctly. Okay, so we understand the elevation models and the importance of displaying similar numeric values with similar colors, or at least knowing that the colors can be misleading if you're unaware of what the colors are actually representing. But now let's shift gears and talk about the uses of hillshade. Hillshade is this silvery surface that's calculated from the elevation models. It is a display tool only, and only in that sentence is in all caps. So pop quiz. Pop quiz, what's the range of numeric values associated with hillshade surfaces? Anyone? Hopefully you've seen this range of values 100 times. The answer, 0 to 254, meaning that there are 255 bins that a color ramp is divided into. And that is a pretty arbitrary number that a lot of us just kind of take for granted, but maybe those insatiably curious of you that are out there are wondering why 255, rando number. Small tangent, it's because most computer screens use 24-bit color pixels, and color is displayed typically using red, green, blue, which means each color component is allowed 8 bits for storage for all of the various shades from light to dark, meaning light to dark red, light to dark green, light to dark blue. 8 binary bits can represent decimal values from 0 to 255. That's where the 255 comes from. Because hillshades are grayscale, 0 to 254 is always the range of possible values, which equals 255 shades of gray representable between black and white. With color, though, red, green, and blue each gets 255 shades from light to dark, which results in 255 times 255 times 255, or over 16.5 million possible colors. It's pretty cool, right? Okay, back to hillshades and the values of 0 to 254. Is it clear to you that these represent a shade of gray now? That's what these values represent. Like that would be the unit of measure, right? Between these would be bin number or shade of gray. So a question is, what else can we use hillshade values for? For example, can 0 to 254 be somehow averaged to describe or compare slopes? The answer is no. Can hillshade values be compared to describe terrain roughness? No. Do hillshade values correlate with aspect or the direction a slope is facing? No, hard no. It is just a color between black and white. A hillshade value of 33, for example, on one map, might represent a steep location facing east, but on another map, a color gray equal to 33 might represent a kind of a flat area facing south. There is no meaning to the hillshade values themselves, so don't ever include them in a legend on a formal map. So then the question is, what can we do with hillshade? Well, we can make our elevation rasters read like the actual terrain that they represent. Hillshades add the illusion of shadow, giving the otherwise flat-looking DEMs a 3D effect. So how did I do that? We do it using the blending effects. Blending effects are found in the raster layer tools. To activate the raster layer tools, you need to click on a raster layer in the contents pane, and then the blending happens between the indicated raster layer and the layer immediately below it. So first, click on the layer you want to impact in the contents pane, click on raster layer, and then experiment with the layer blending methods. Here I've multiplied the DEM and hillshade layers. I had to go through and do it 3 times, once in each group. All right, so we've covered elevation values, color ramps, and hillshades. Now let's dig into resolution. I'm talking about cell size. Resolution is the width of a pixel on the ground. Here we're looking at the same 3 data sets, the half-meter LiDAR on the left, the 5-meter autocorrelated DEM in the middle, and the 10-meter USGS DEM on the right. Notice the scale bar. The three maps are the same scale and extent. The 10 meters is the width on the ground of 1 pixel on this map, which is why it's called a 10-meter DEM. The same scale bar covers 2 of the 5-meter pixel widths in the autocorrelated DEM, but notice that it's not twice as big, it's 4 times. The cell size of the USGS data is 4 times. And then I hope this makes perfect sense that this would be called a 5-meter DEM. And then pop quiz. How many pixels does the 10-meter scale bar span in width on the half-meter LiDAR data set? If you guessed 20, ding, 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 5 points to Gryffindor. That is correct. Okay, here we've zoomed out from 10 meters to 500 meters. Look closely at the 3 maps. Compare between them. Again, we've got the LiDAR, the autocorrelated, and the USGS DEM. They're very different images. The LiDAR has crisply defined features. The 10-meter DEM on the right is blurrier, for sure, which should make sense. It's just like an image that has lower resolution. But the 5-meter map in the middle is surprisingly crisp for being only 4 times the number of cells in the USGS map. But I want you to shift your thinking away from the clarity or crispness and look at the actual features on the landscape. What can you detect? What can you visually detect? The clarity is related to the resolution, but the features we see on the landscape are related to the data quality or the data accuracy. And this is the single most important distinction I want you to take away from this exercise, that resolution and data quality are not the same thing. Precision and accuracy, that's what we're talking about. Resolution is the precision, and the data quality has to do with the accuracy of the data. Data can be precise, but incorrect. Data can also be accurate, but imprecise. And that's what we're seeing here. This is accurate, but imprecise. This is precise, but inaccurate. You can see that there seems to be a lot of very well-defined surface detail in this middle autocorrelated map, but a lot of it doesn't appear on the LiDAR map or the USGS map. Here I've just zoomed in a little bit more. Note the scale bar width is 100 meters. All 3 maps showing the exact same scale and extent. In the LiDAR and USGS maps on the left and right, the drainage channel is very clear. The area on the south side of the channel is very similar looking, and there's a different feature in the middle of the autocorrelated map. And the drainage channel area on the map in the middle here looks filled in, and the detail is almost completely lost. This tributary channel coming in from the north is almost entirely gone on the photogrammetry map, but is very well defined on the LiDAR and the USGS maps. If we treat the LiDAR as the closest modeled surface to the truth, which we are going to do, then we should be able to compare the elevations of the autocorrelated in the USGS maps relative to the elevations in the LiDAR map to get a sense of the spatial distribution of elevation differences between the different elevation sources. And one way to do this would be to calculate the difference between the elevation surfaces, which you might actually be working on this week. Another way to simply visualize the difference would be to use the Explore tool like I did earlier. I'm going to show you a third way. First, I created a point layer and digitized a random set of points on the landscape. You could create a transect, like a straight line cutting across here, or create a grid of points, or place points in specific places to map features, kind of like I've done here. Then I run a tool called Extract Values to Points. And in this case, because I want to extract elevation values from multiple DEMs to the same set of points, I can run a tool called Extract Multi-Valued Points. This tool overlays my point file with the rasters I set as input data sets. Here I've added the 10-meter DEM from the USGS, the 5-meter autocorrelated DEM, and the half-meter LiDAR DEM. And then it allows me to specify my output field name. The elevations from each raster are extracted at each point's location and written to the attribute table of the point file. So that's what you can see here. At each point's location, it extracted the elevation from the 10 meter, the 5 meter, and the half meter data. And we could sit and try and make sense of these elevations or use the magic of data visualization to make the comparison more effective. So what I did is I just copied the attributes from the table and pasted them into Excel because I'm old school, but and actually check the description for a link where I've got a demo video where you can make the same chart in ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro has some really great data viz tools built in. Okay, so I plotted the elevations as a line to visualize the points almost like an interpolated surface or a longitudinal profile. If we imagine a transect basically running from point to point, these two lines represent the elevation surfaces in profile. And maybe you're wondering why I say two lines when there are three surfaces being represented. Because we can't see one of the surfaces. The LiDAR elevations and the USGS elevations are nearly identical. They're displaying right on top of each other. That's really telling. The deviant orange line represents the elevations extracted from the 5 meter autocorrelated DEM. This should be a light bulb moment for you. Higher resolution does not equal higher quality or higher accuracy. In some places, like at point location 4 and 6, the autocorrelated surface is 10 meters higher than the LiDAR surface. That's over 30 feet of difference. In other places, like at location 5, it doesn't look like a lot, but if you look at where the line bends here, this is over 10 meters of difference where the autocorrelated surface is lower than the LiDAR surface. This should deeply concern you. 10 meters of vertical error is a lot of error, especially for a 2 meter or 5 meter, resolution DEM. And especially because it isn't spatially uniform error. It isn't systemic, which might allow us to actually control for this kind of error. It's non-uniformly distributed in space. Okay, so here is key takeaway number 4. Resolution impacts the level of surface detail we can identify or discern. If we're trying to identify streams that are in reality 1 to 2 meters wide using a 10 meter DEM, those features are not going to be mappable. Another issue that I often encounter is the disconnect between different resolutions of various data layers. For example, you might have a 1 meter LiDAR data set for your study area, and you're able to successfully model the channel and the floodplain, and you now want to extract land cover types within the riparian corridor. But the land cover data set that you have has a 30 meter resolution. You are not going to be able to map adequately, a 10 meter riparian zone adjacent to a 1 to 5 meter stream and extract something meaningful for land cover. I hope you're with me. It's really important to think about the scale of surface features relative to resolution and the resolution within your analysis between different data layers. Okay, higher resolution maps, though, aren't always necessarily the solution. That's the final and biggest takeaway from this exercise. The higher resolution autocorrelated maps, higher resolution than the 10 meter USGS data, don't have sufficient quality to map and model surface features because of the way they were constructed. You can see the description for a link for more description on these autocorrelated or photogrammetry DEMs. So what's the moral of the story? The 10 meter DEMs available from the USGS are very high quality and serve almost all purposes unless very small surface features are needing to be detected. And then you will need better data. LiDAR-derived data, drone data where you create structure from motion, that kind of thing. The autocorrelated data should be used for display purposes at relatively large aerial extents only. Don't use this data for any kind of surface analysis. The error is just too high. And that is that. Please let me know if you have any questions.